And welcome again to Cottage Talk. I am Russ Goldman. This is another episode of Fulham News and Notes, and it's for today, which is March the 14th, 2023. I have three topics that I'm going to go through, and they are Fulham's extension of the contract for Luke Harris. I'll be sharing my thoughts on that. Secondly, I'm going to be talking about commentary from Eric Wynalda, who is a former member of the U.S. men's national team, a pundit over here on a show called Counterattack on Sirius XMFC. He had some very interesting things to say about Harrison Reed, and I'm going to share them and share my feedback on that. Lastly, I'll be sharing my thoughts on the latest speculation in regards to Marco Silva and interest from Tottenham and potential interest with Fulham with a new deal. So we'll be talking about that in this episode, which goes about 15 to 20 minutes. As always, please do subscribe on YouTube and Apple Podcasts. It does help other Fulham supporters find us on Apple Podcasts. Please leave us a review and a rating. It also helps others find us along with Fulham supporters. I would really appreciate it. Okay, so let's get going. Let's start with the extension for Luke Harris with Fulham. The 18-year-old has impressed, and what's great about this is Fulham have signed one of their own to a long-term deal. And I'm going to read from the Fulham website an excerpt of their commentary, their article on the signing of Luke Harris. It is entitled Harris Signs Contract Extension. Here it is. The club is delighted to announce that following his 18th birthday, Luke Harris has signed an extended contract until 2026 with a club option for an additional year. Our young attacking midfielder made his first senior start for Fulham in our Carabao Cup game against Crawley earlier this season and has since appeared a number of times under Marco Silva. His quality was soon spotted on the international stage with Rob Page, including Luke in Wales' squad for their UEFA Nations League matches against Belgium and Poland. Harris was delighted to extend his stay at Fulham. Here are quotes from Luke Harris. Quote, I'm real happy with all of it. I've been here for a very long time now, so I'm pleased I'll be staying for even longer. Ever since I arrived here, I've settled in really well, which was really important as I moved here on my own at age of 13. At first, it was difficult, but looking back now, I can see that it was all worth it. It feels like home here, and I'm loving my journey at Fulham. I'd like to thank my mom and dad who have sacrificed a lot for me, often coming over on weekends with my brothers to watch me play. I couldn't have done it without all of them, unquote. So those are quotes from Luke Harris on his extension, which extends him to Fulham until 2026 with a club option for one additional year. This is massive news. This is huge news. After Fulham have lost several academy players, they've now made an effort to keep one of their key academy players, hopefully for the long term. I think that they've shown him a path to the first team. Luke Harris, I think, is someone that could be a starter for Fulham someday. He's not there yet. He's working his trade. But what's great about his development, he has featured with the under-21s. He's worked his way up. He has now played with Fulham's first team. He's been part of Fulham's first team. No, he has not featured that much, but he has worked and trained with Fulham's first team on a regular basis. He's learning to be a professional. I think Fulham have done it the right way with Luke Harris. Would I have liked him to go out on loan? Potentially, I thought that might have been a good path for him, but maybe him working underneath Marco Silva for this entire season could benefit him even more than going out on loan. So the future is extremely bright for Luke Harris. Fulham did the right thing here by signing him up long term. If another club wants to come in for him, they're going to have to pay big time for him. I hope Luke Harris has a long career at Fulham. This is only the beginning. I think he could be just as good as some of Fulham's other academy players that are now playing in the Premier League. We're talking Ryan Sessegnon and Fabio Carvalho. He's the next one. Who knows? Maybe he'll be the best one. We shall see. This is a huge signing for Fulham. This is big news. We needed some good news after 2 losses, and this is extremely good news. Best of luck to Luke Harris, and I expect to see you playing for Fulham, maybe in a good role next season. Who knows? Because if you develop as much as I think you might force your way into playing some serious minutes next season. Best of luck, Luke Harris. Glad that you signed for Fulham long term. That's part 1 of the show. So let's go to part 2. And this has to do with my drive to work this morning. So I often listen to a show on Sirius XMFC called Counterattack. And this was a replay from last night's show. The hosts of the show are 2 former members of the U.S. men's national team, Tony Meola and Eric Wynalda. Eric Wynalda had some very interesting things to say, both of them about Fulham's loss against Arsenal. Let's just say they both were extremely critical of Anthony Robinson's play in this match. You know what? I agree with all that. I absolutely agree with all that. He deserves the criticism that I heard on this show. What made me basically take pause here was where Eric Wynalda went next. And he decided to go and really just basically say, and I'm going to say it right now, that he does not believe, it seems to him, that Harrison Reed is not a Premier League player. I'm paraphrasing, but he was talking about how when you watch a match and you're thinking this player basically doesn't belong, you see it on other clubs, and he mentioned for Fulham being Harrison Reed. And I heard this and I was surprised by it. But I guess after that match, I understand why he might be saying this. But it also shows that Eric Wynalda does not watch Fulham each and every match. I do. He is a world-renowned footballer. He has so much more knowledge of the game than I would ever know, probably 100 times, okay? Eric Wynalda's played the game, so he deserves all that respect. However, I watch Fulham each and every week. I know Fulham. And I've watched the career of Harrison Reed. So the way I look at it is, I understand the point in this particular match, but my counter to Eric would be, watch him play when João Palhinha plays. You'll see a different player. There's a reason why Marco Silva changed his role last season. He wanted him to be more of a box-to-box central midfielder, basically a player that would be just pestering the other team. That's where he is at his best. When you take him out of that role, and especially when you take Palhinha out of his role, I do think it affects Harrison Reed. I don't think you are getting the best out of Harrison Reed. I'm not saying that Harrison Reed played well in this match. I just think if you're going to make a judgment on a player in one match, I think that's a little bit unfair. I watch all the matches. Harrison Reed deserves to be in the Premier League. I disagree with his commentary. I understand where it's coming from based on one match, but I'm looking at it over a span of this season and also his time in the Championship and the last time he was in the Premier League. Harrison Reed deserves to be in the Premier League. He's a Premier League player. Eric, if you are listening to this, I respectfully disagree with you. You are a fantastic pundit. You know your football. I know Fulham, so I'm going to respectfully disagree with you. I watch him each and every week. In my opinion, he's a Premier League player, and I'm not changing my mind on that. Okay. Coming up next to end this episode of Cottage Talk, I'm going to talk about the situation with Marco Silva, all the speculation surrounding him lately. Okay, to end the show, I'm going to talk about what's been going on in the papers in regards to Marco Silva. There's been a lot of talk in the Sun in regards to Tottenham potentially being interested in Marco Silva as their replacement if they move on from Conte. And there's a lot of speculation that they could be and that they might be looking at Marco Silva, but they could also be looking at other targets as well. I'm going to comment on this article that actually was in today on Football Insider from Pete O'Rourke. And Pete knows his Fulham stuff. He has some good sources. So I'm not doubting this article that Pete wrote today. So here is the title of it. Sources. Fulham accelerate Marco Silva new deal talks to fend off Tottenham. So I'm just going to read an excerpt from Pete's article. Like I said, I respect Pete. I do feel that he has sources on this that are very credible. So this is what he wrote. Fulham are set to pull out all the stops to keep manager Marco Silva, with Tottenham interested in making him their new boss. It is believed the Cottages have held talks with a 45-year-old about a new contract, but want to accelerate negotiations in order to end speculation. Okay, so let's start there. So I believe this all to be true because, let's be honest, Fulham should be accelerating talks with Marco Silva. They should be trying to get a deal done. I do hope they get a deal done sooner than later because this speculation is going to continue. Marco was even asked this in his presser on Friday. He was asked this topic, and he basically said he's happy at Fulham and will not address it. So the press are going to talk. Fans are going to talk. That's going to continue. What Fulham can do to end the speculation, to end the talk, is to get a new deal done. So I'm not saying that Tony and Shahid listen to the show, but if they do what you can to get a deal done. Alistair McIntosh as well. Just get a deal done. This manager, you can build around. You can build what you want, what you envision Fulham to be. He needs a long-term deal. Please get it done. If they're accelerating talks, meet somewhere in the middle and get a deal done for Marco Silva. And I hope Marco Silva wants to stay with Fulham long-term. I think it's a great marriage of a manager and a club. So I'm hoping that this becomes reality sooner than later because I think Fulham need Marco Silva. And you could argue, but I'm going to make the argument, I think Silva needs Fulham too. I think it really works hand in hand. He's had the opportunity to really show what he can do after, I guess you could say, some failures. Well, he has succeeded now. So I think his next step is not moving beyond Fulham, but making Fulham the team that he truly wants them to be. The stepping stone, instead of going to another club, is to build Fulham to be in a Premier League club for a very long time. Dare I say, a team that could fight for Europe each and every season. I say, why not? I'm going to say it right now. The Cons have deep pockets. I know we deal with FFP, but there are ways to get players to Fulham. Marco Silva is a draw. Players want to play for him. So it makes sense that the Cons sign him up long-term. But I also think it makes sense for Marco Silva to stay because he's going to be backed. He's absolutely going to be backed. He's going to be given what he wants. I truly believe that. I think he already has. Maybe not as much as he wants because managers want more. They always want more. But I think the Cons will give Marco what he wants in the transfer window. I think they already have started the process. So for me, get this deal done. If the Cons are listening, make a deal with Marco Silva. Make him Fulham's manager long-term because the speculation isn't going to stop until you get a deal done with Marco Silva. It's just going to continue. It's good business to get a deal done with Marco Silva. And that's how I'm going to end this episode. Okay. Well, as always, please do subscribe on YouTube and Apple Podcasts. It does help other Fulham supporters find us. I'll be back with another episode very soon. My name is Russ Goldman. Thank you as always for watching and listening to Cottage Talk, now part of the talkSPORT Fan Network.